All right, what's good, people? It's another episode of the famous Duanus podcast. Got a very special guest here, Mr. Braxton. Say what up to the people.
Peace. What's going on, y'all?
So, if you can't tell by my Umar Johnson outfit, you know what I'm saying? We have to really tackling some. This is a very pressing topic that always seems to happen around this time of year, around great L. Haj Malik Shabazz. It's his birthday. But they try to slander.
5 days away, I think, right?
Huh?
A couple days away.
Yeah, on the 19th. It's actually my grandmother's birthday.
5 days away. My grandmother's birthday, okay.
So I always was able to remember that. But
that's my guy, man. They've been slandering my man. I don't understand what it is. It's like it just once or twice every year. That's when all of a sudden, you know, these they just keep digging up and unearthing these same, you name it, man. From the Netflix documentary to, you know, he was undercover is always something, man. I don't understand I do understand. I think I do what the infatuation is with X, his legacy, or that question his impact or his influence. We got to make sure that we, you know, doubling and tripling and quadrupling and quintupling up on it. You know what I'm saying?
Word.
Spread some light.
Yeah, because I first heard about Malcolm X. I think I was in I might have been in fourth grade, and we had to do like a book report for Black History Month. I wanted to do James Brown. And my pops was like, nah, maybe for your music class, not this one. And he gave me he didn't give me the autobiography, he gave me the manuscript of the Malcolm X movie by Spike Lee.
Okay.
And so I read that, and I'm just sitting there like blown away. Cause you know, all I knew up until then was like, you know, just people talking about MLK and stuff like that. I was just like, nah, I'm more identified with him than that whole peaceful thing.
Absolutely.
Cause like, I mean, I just, you know, growing up, like, I was all over the place, all over New York, but like around that time, I just came from Queens, and like we fought every single day. That was just what it was. Then you gotta always establish the hierarchy. It's just, you know, the inner beast. It's just how we. So that whole nonviolent thing, that was fresh to me. Like. So, you know, reading the book and stuff like that, it really opened my mind and stuff. And then when I finally got my hands on the autobiography, man, the rest was history.
You know what, man? It's so important that you mentioned that, because you brought up a couple points. So, like, for me, me having grown up in a very, shall we say, right-wing, Black evangelical home, right? Where a lot of the doctrine is around, you know, the redemptiveness of Christ, and there's almost like this undertone of all lives matter, or who cares, you know, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so you grow up under that, but at the same time, your dad, you know, before he became a preacher, he was out in the street, so it's a lot of things that he would talk about.
Right.
In many ways, he was the product of his environment. Sounds a little bit too cliche, but at the same time, you know, he was a product of literally his environment, and he could probably, and he definitely could, based upon his life, could attest to a lot of the things, to a lot of the symptoms of the greater cause that Malcolm X was really, you know, on a mission to tackle, man. So what happened was, when I was younger, we used to always go over my grandmother's house. And when we would go over my grandmother's house, right, Trenton, there was a picture of, you know, every Black family got to have a picture of Martin and Malcolm, even if they are going in different directions. You know what I'm saying? So she had a picture of Martin Luther King, I think it was downstairs. And then right before you go to, I remember it because going down the hallway, it always seemed like it was dark in there, because my grandma would always be in there just chilling. And I would always see the painting. And I would just be like, who is this, man? So I asked my mom one day, I said, who is that? She said, oh, that's Malcolm X. She kind of was, you know, not dismissive, but she wasn't too interested in, you know, elaborating on that. Right. So, you know, I guess you fast forward, you know, as I'm getting older, I'm probably the only person in my family, I'm definitely the only person in my immediate family that would really ponder and question the place of myself as a Black person within the Black community, as well as, in terms of what my role would be. Because, I was always raised to, whatever you do, try to be impactful. And so it just made sense to me, what am I going to do for my people? And so not only that, what would that mean for, my people's place in the world? And so, Dr. King, we're kind of taught to admire him no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if we were introduced to Malcolm X at a young age, the school system would have told us to admire Martin Luther King as well, right? So, but Malcolm X, I started to, just ponder those things. And then I think finally it really got to the point where I think it was in the 9th grade, I got suspended like 3 times. Just being a stupid, teenager or, preteen or whatever.
Right.
And, my parents were like, you need to get it together. You know what I mean? You weren't raised this way. And I had a mischievous streak. And so what I was thinking, and this is to your point when you said about, growing up, there was always fights, right? It wasn't about the energy that I had, but it was about how I directed it and how I channeled it. So when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, it was like everything just made sense. It's like, okay, so this part of me that I'm feeling, this urge, this adrenaline, this whatever you have, whatever you want to call it, this I don't know, the masculinity that's growing inside of you, it's nothing wrong with it. You just have to know how to channel it, how to direct it. And Malcolm X was the pinnacle of that, as well as the nation. So that's my introduction to him. And once I had read the autobiography in the 10th grade, I was hooked after that. I tried to read every single thing I could on him. I went and, they had this thing going where they had all of his speeches, his recorded speeches, and even his, when he recorded the FBI, when they came to, try to get him to turn on the nation, I would just listen to those things intently, man. And so it was just like, for me, it was like I had found a piece of myself, or an image of myself that I knew. But that aside, is him being just this template of Black manhood, specifically how to address being a Black man in a country, in a society, in a world that doesn't like us. It was just, he's just one of the most important and influential figures of my life.
Yeah, definitely. Him, Garvey, Khalid, and Henry Clark, man.
Henry Clark, yep.
Damn. But so I'm trying to figure out where this all started with the whole slander thing.
The
first time I heard something negative, I was actually in a class. I was in college the second time. Years ago. And we was watching it was Black History Month. We was watching the autobiography, not the autobiography, the Malcolm X movie.
Yep.
And we were talking about it afterwards. And there was a Black chick in the class, and she was like, I don't know, like, wasn't Malcolm X a misogynist? And like, my heart shattered, yo. I never thought I would hear such a thing.
Yeah.
This is in front of mixed company too.
She just heard that word.
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't want to just look at her and say bitch, because like that's not the right thing.
Right.
Like
that. But it's like, sis, come on now, like.
Because like, of all of the people that, all of the male leaders, Black heroes that we've had, I don't think anyone wrote for the women like he did.
Correct. All of the things that, a lot of the Black women today, particularly these, very militant Black feminists, all the things that they say that they're entitled to. I think they just don't like the idea of there being a figure, or particularly a Black figure, that is, number one, for those same rights of women, but it's at the same time as a masculine man, a very macho man, an alpha type, that type. And they don't like that because they feel like in order for it to be one, on one side, it has to come at the cost of another. In order for you to look up to women, you got to be, one of them soft, chumps, or one of them, as we call it, simps. They don't understand. I locked myself out. They don't understand It doesn't work like that. And Malcolm is a complex figure for them, you know. And you know what's crazy? I was just, and I was getting my thoughts together for this conversation. And what I found is that I alluded to this on my Twitter as well. What I found is that Malcolm X is universally understood to be that black male backbone, and so the slander that's come toward him is really just a symptom of a larger phenomenon, which is just all about just challenging any attempt for men to be, black men specifically, to be themselves. And I understand it from a strategic standpoint, because I know that a lot of the black people that push this narrative, I know who they speak for, or better yet, I know who's speaking for them.
Right.
So I mean, honestly, if I was the enemy, I would think the same thing as well. As I said this to somebody earlier, I said, listen, if you're about to invade a town, what's the first thing you get out the way? You get the men out the way. Then you go for the women and children. Now, who is looked upon as the messianic figure and the embodiment of black male strength and bravery and courage and intelligence and articulate and composure and direction and vision? Typically, that's Malcolm. That's Brother Malcolm. And so if you can muddy up that image in any way, whether that be, challenging, what is today, at least on the social end of things, the progressivist ambition of, challenging and poking at our ideas or our perceptions of heteronormativity, or whether that means you're just saying, okay, he might have been straight, but he was a misogynist. Now he's wrong on, the moral front, right? If there's any way you can do that, obviously, as a war tactic, you're going to do just that. So I understand it. I see where it's coming from. It just is disappointing to have these debates on public platforms with people that we should be on the same side as, or should be on the same side as us, because we're really on the side of truth, and on the side of facts. Much of the things that they say, they don't really have anything to substantiate it, nothing to prove it, but it just continues regardless. Because at the end of the day, when people want to believe something, if it suits their agenda, it doesn't matter what the facts are, right?
Yeah, because I mean, like, all the people that they really highlighted like that were this very peaceful, very civil, poetic. We could have this little, discourse, whatever, but there was no real action. And
absolutely.
I'm even thinking about, later learning about Martin, was that he didn't really live the nigga experience like that.
Nope.
Like, he kind of put himself in that. I guess technically he was a new black. He was the original new black. So, but Malcolm lived this.
It takes a certain level of on the ground, in the field experience to really be able to get through to the black man and the black woman.
Right.
Like actually, this is the crazy thing, right? So when I went to Seton Hall, there was a brother, he was, mid-70s, but he was going for, I think, his 9th master's degree, right? And he's from Georgia. He lived on the same street as Dr. King, so he knew Dr. King. And it was a, fairly suburban or well-to-do neighborhood, right? And you can see how that idealism, at least you see how the enemy was able to manipulate his upbringing, not having had to go through the things that Malcolm did. He didn't have to, one of his earliest memories is the Klan burning down his house. He didn't have to, be snatched away from his family because his mother went insane because the Klan, put his father, underneath a trolley. He didn't have to go in and out of different foster homes and be called a nigger so much that he thought that was his name. He didn't have to be told, he was able to grow up with the belief that if you work hard at something that you can achieve it. He was not able to come up under those circumstances. So he took the scenic route. He grew up and he walked and he wore the zoot suits and he lived in Boston and he knew how it was to walk the streets of Harlem and, he got to know some people that are considered legends today, right? And so when you take that scenic route, it gives you a certain level of perspective that I think just resonates with people. And I think that's one of the key reasons why it's such a strong ambition of the enemy to muddy his reputation in any way possible, right? If black men didn't care as to whether Malcolm X was straight, they wouldn't go to that, right? They wouldn't even allege that maybe he was gay. You know, if Malcolm X was not perceived to be a man's man, the enemy would not care to have puppets to frame him as though he's a person that looks down upon women, right? And all you got to do is look within the nation. They're full of female scientists and nurses and nutritionists, right? Geniuses, brilliant women, right? But that's just the ploy of the enemy.
Yeah, and it's crazy. What did you think about the documentary, the Netflix joint? I think it was Who Shot Malcolm X?
Right. Well, I mean, number one, when Sean King showed up, I was like, oh Lord, here this go, right? Sean King showed up, and immediately I started to glaze over because it's like, you know, I don't know. Anyway, and then they had another brother on there who, you know, I feel like he wasn't really qualified to be on something like that, to be talking about Malcolm X like that. I think I think a lot of the people that were on there have a very surface level, I don't even want to say surface level, but a liberal understanding of Malcolm X. No real intimate understanding of him. You know, they don't strike me as people who have sat down and talked with people from the nation that grew up around that time and can talk about the impact. And so that was one thing. But then even still, you know, one of the issues that I have, you know, because even today, you know, Malcolm was killed in 65, 3 years before King, right? Malcolm was killed in 65, which is what, 45 years from now ago? 55? My math, whatever. 45, 55 years ago, right? And you still, even today, you see people from the nation, right, who might have a certain, you know, recollection of events, right? And then you got people that were on Malcolm's side. And I feel like every single time we keep on letting the feds get away with this. Like I feel like the 99% of the conversation should specifically be upon the FBI's involvement in instigating, you know, the tensions between the followers of Malcolm and the Nation of Islam. Listen, I have my opinions on the Nation of Islam, you know, and my opinion is that they're an organization that is full of human beings, flawed, and people had certain loyalties at the time. Certain people did not have to be asked to do certain things, you know, because they felt such a strict loyalty to certain people, right? But at the same time, I think that the biggest thing that you can get from that is that if you're not focusing on who was the one that was sort of like the puppet master the entire time, which, I mean, it's so obvious. I mean, there's literally an entire book of their documents, of them strategizing on ways to get in the way and infiltrate and sow seeds of discord between Black people. And in some ways, you know, both sides made it easy for the other. And we can be realistic and acknowledge that. But that's my thoughts on it. I felt like, you know, the main, I forgot what the brother's name was. I feel like his heart was in the right place. But at the same time, I feel like the documentary as a whole really missed the key element, which was the FBI's involvement. And that should have been the focal point, right? Not because anything else really just stokes the fire between two puppets. Let me not say two puppets, but two people who were being played, maneuvered, or manipulated, right? That's just the way it is. So it was enjoyable to see Malcolm, and you know, but it's always enjoyable to see Malcolm, right? That's not, you know, I could have got that type of enjoyment just by typing in YouTube. So it was good to see a brother that was that passionate about Malcolm and trying to figure out who killed Malcolm X. I'll tell you what, me being a Jersey boy, it was a little disappointing that, you know, the rifleman or the main shooter was from Jersey, you know, from Newark. And it was a little bit cringy to see certain elected officials from Newark, you know, kind of having this, almost this no snitch undertone kind of thing. You know, oh, nobody really knows if it's true. You know what I mean? It's the rehearsed aloofness of them was just kind of pathetic to me, to be honest with you. That was a little disappointing, especially since some of these elected officials, you know, they ran on the ticket of them being woke, right? So, you know, you would think that they would at least, I won't go further into that. But my point is that part of that was a little bit disappointing. But other than that, I mean, it's Malcolm. So I feel like if I gave it a 50 out of 100, that 50 would be because it was just Malcolm, just by virtue of being about Malcolm, you know?
Yeah, I think that I can parallel that that movie, well, that documentary. I parallel that to the Jay Electronica album.
Damn. Yeah, how so?
Because it was a lot of I mean, just off of, I guess, Malcolm X, we could say is Hove as far as like just carrying everything. And then just everybody else was just like Jay, just kind of like Jay Electronica, just kind of being lazy, bringing up bullshit. But yeah, when I saw Sean King and the other person you talk about is Cory Booker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cory Booker and the other guy, the other bald guy from Newark.
Other bald guy.
The mayor.
Oh yeah.
I ain't gonna say his name, but you know.
Yeah, of course not. But yeah, that just put a bad taste in my mouth. And you know, when you think about like the fact that they didn't talk about, you know, the Fed involvement like that,
right?
It makes you think of that meme where they got the buff white dude and the buff black dude, like, you know, shaking to the hands. It's just like the nation and the Feds. Like, but the fact that, you know, the Feds did everything to try to, you know, discourage his character and stuff like that, and they couldn't really find anything. So when someone was because that same person I told you about, the same chick that talked about, oh, was he misogynist? He goes, and then she brought up, oh, wasn't he gay also? And I was just like, And
so you know what? Go ahead. I got a question. Go ahead though.
And I'm just sitting there like, where did you get this from? Because the only time I ever heard that before was it was you know, Brother Rich, Black Magic 363, I think it is. Yeah, he was interviewing Dick Gregory. This is mad long ago. And he had brought that up, and Dick Gregory cursed him clean out. Don't ask me no goofy question like that.
Yeah. As he should have.
Yeah. And I met Dick Gregory.
So what is your thoughts? Huh? Oh, no, wow. Now that must have been an experience. But the question I was going to ask, what are your thoughts on this recent resurgence, right? Because this isn't new, but what are your thoughts on this recent resurgence of these allegations of Malcolm being gay? Like, okay, so let me just say what my thoughts are, right? So even if that was true, right? One would still not be able to deny the truth in everything that he said, including the way he lived, right?
Right.
However, given the fact that we know that it's not true, right? And how do we know that it's not true? Well, let's just put it this way. We can say without a reasonable doubt that it's not true based upon the lack of any type of evidence of that, right? And we can talk about everything from the fact, you know, people might talk about the whole, you know, for example, Malcolm had a colleague, you know, when he was running the streets, who would get paid by an elderly white man to rub talcum powder on him until he climaxed. And somewhere along the line, people who clearly must not have read the book believed that Malcolm was the one doing that. And so they said that Malcolm was a sex worker and he was just so down to get $1 that he'll do anything, even if it meant doing with guys, right? Now, there's absolutely no evidence for that at all whatsoever, right? I think if anything, there was a guy who was one of Malcolm's siblings' sons who said in his memoir that Malcolm was DL. But, I mean, listen, leading up to his death, some of Malcolm's own siblings who were in the nation took sides against Malcolm. So it stands to reason that if that's the case, if they all really even turn on their own brother, then obviously to their children, they'll have negative things to say, right? But even still, you could talk about Malcolm's immediate family, who said that is unequivocally false, patently false, categorically, right? So you have to ask the question, why, number one, why is this such a big thing that you want to emphasize? Why do you want Malcolm to be gay so bad? And then number two, why, when you're talking about people who you're taking the word of somebody who didn't know him as intimately as someone who did? Why is that? And they never have an answer for that.
Yeah, they have no receipts. And it's crazy because I was reading up on because after she said that, because when I first heard it, you know, when the with the Dick Gregory interview, I just dismissed it. But then when I heard her say it, I did my research, I did my Googles or whatever, and I read the story about the dude, and it was like, so he apparently had no real thing to back up off.
Right.
He had no real backing, like no substantial evidence. And he was interviewing people with the nation that had it out for him to begin with. So that's not really a reliable source at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you interview my enemy, they're gonna tell you everything, whether it's true or not.
Of course.
They'll tell you anything.
My enemies to this day got a million things to say about me that I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
So, you know.
Exactly. So, and you know, I think the fact that, you know, he died before the book came out, I'll just say God don't like ugly.
Mm-hmm. There you go. That's what happens. So my question to you, what do you think, what are your thoughts on, just from the broader why behind all of this? Why are people so, and it's a very small minority, right? It's a very small minority. Why are people so infatuated with this idea of spreading this misinformation that Brother Malcolm X was gay?
I know exactly why. And I was actually about to tie into it, what I was saying before. It's the fact that their heroes of that persuasion haven't made any real substantial gains besides being that. Yeah, Baldwin talked a good game, but I mean, wasn't he? Was he the towel boy for, you know, the other side? Mayor Rustin was with the CIA and the Feds.
He was an informant,
at the same damn time.
So he was playing all sides.
Yeah, he was trying
more ways than one. Yeah, so
you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, there's nobody aside from entertainment that did anything substantial that fits their demographic. And since they identify their actual being of being that way, it's like they have nothing else to offer but their sexuality.
Absolutely.
And if you do that, in my eyes, you're a whore.
They want to make Malcolm like them, pretty much. You know?
Oh, wait, run that back?
Yeah, I said they want to make Malcolm like them, pretty much.
Right. Because, again, like, nobody, you know, made such strides, you know, for their people the way that he did. You know, a lot of people were ops. It was a lot of, and actually, I saw Judge Joe Brown tweet this, I think it was either today or yesterday, and, you know, a lot of things I agree with, a lot of things I don't agree with, but this one was on point. He was saying that, you know, people always talk about unity, but when there was unity, there was a lot of backstabbers, there was a lot of double agents, there was a lot of this. Perhaps, maybe, unity isn't the answer.
Right.
Perhaps, you know, it should be more like-minded people that have, you know, similar agendas and similar goals, sticking with each other. And just do what we got to do. But, yeah, I mean, I gave up on trying to save, you know, everybody, like, years ago.
They don't want to be saved.
They don't want to.
They don't want to. And what I've noticed is, like, just in regards to what Joe Brown said, if I didn't mute him or block him, I probably would have saw that. you know? So like, you know, if, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. So, you know, if I didn't block George Joe Brown, I probably would have been able to see that tweet earlier today, right? But what I said before, I said, listen, it's kind of like me. I work in investments, right? So one of the biggest things they'll teach when people are like trying to figure out their long-term plan, and make no mistake, you know, the road that Black people have ahead of us is not, you know, an overnight thing. It's a long road ahead. So we need a long-term plan, and the best way to go about that, in order to get the best gains while still protecting yourself, you know, or to invest responsibly, is diversified, right? So you want to have a little bit over here in real assets. You want to have a little bit over here in your derivatives or alternative investments. You want to have a little bit over here in common stock and preferred stock, a little bit over here in short-term fixed income, right? So you're putting them in different areas so that when one area doesn't do so well, it will be hedged by an investment that's different, right? So in the same way, and when it comes to us as a people, listen, it's like what, 43 million people, 43 million Black people just in America. It is very inefficient to expect all of us to be unified, because the fact of the matter is there are Black people who cannot stand the sight of each other. They can't stand the idea of each other. You see it on Twitter. They're saying they wish all Black men died, right? So it's like, clearly this is not a road that everybody can travel. And so because of that, it's best of us, to your point and to Judge Joe Brown's point, to make sure that we have our own niches or our own tribes, so to speak, so that it's like, listen, you go your way and you do what you think as a unit, what you believe is best for the people. As for me and my house, or me and my tribe, we're going to do things this way. And in 20 years, we'll see who was right and who was wrong, right? And that's, unfortunately, I don't even know if it's unfortunately. Realistically, that's just the way it has to be. And this is nothing different today than it was, you know, in the 60s. It was the same thing, right? Even before that, right? You know, from the UNIA, me being a guard, I know that especially, right? You know, versus the NAACP, another collision of two movements, one which was largely co-opted by, you know, white people and Jews, right? This is just a fact. And the other one, which was more Black grassroots, but was instigated in between by the FBI, right? But even still then, nobody was all completely unified. There were divisions, there were, you know, disagreements. Same thing even before that with Du Bois versus Booker T, right? There's always going to be that tug of war. And I think the best thing that we can do, again, to your point, is to somewhat embrace that and know that we can have different philosophies. We don't have to be chummy. I have no intention of being chummy with the people that are saying they wish straight Black men died. You know, I have no intention of being friends or buddy, but I don't have to go to war with you every single day. At the end of the day, listen, this is a long-term plan that we have. If you believe the route and the philosophy that you have is best for the people, you go right ahead and do it. And me and my camp over here, we know what we do. We know what we believe in. We're going to put that to work. And in 20 years, our grandkids are going to be able to decide who was right and who was wrong. And that's how willing I am to bet on what I believe in. You know, as a Pan-Africanist, as a Garveyite, as a Black nationalist, as a Black man, you know?
Most definitely, man. And it's funny that it made me think of two things that two of my uncles said. One of them, he actually was old enough to remember when Malcolm X died, because he heard it on the radio. Wow. He was with my grandma. And I guess he had some questions. He was still like young, but he was like, she said, like, you know, whatever that was in the wash should show up in the rinse. And then another thing that my uncle said, my other uncle, other side of the family, he was like, you know, growing up, every woman, you know, make fun of how me and my sister talked or whatever. And, you know, how we were different and, you know, more focused, but they dead now. So, which is very morbid. He's very morbid. Yeah. But, you know, it's
the truth, you know?
To your point, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not about, and I think that's not a lot of the issues with Black people is that we can't see, we're very nearsighted when it comes to a lot of things. It's all about instant gratification. It's all about like right now. We can't see the big picture.
Right.
So, you know, it's just when we think about shit, just like the culture. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry if I'm like all over the place, but it's just so much.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because like we're indoctrinated with this culture of just, you know, consume, consume, consume. The whole concept of, you know, I can't take it with me, so I'm gonna throw all this money at a strip club.
Uh-huh.
Instead of, you know, setting up some index funds for my kids.
Uh-huh.
Just like,
Yeah.
it's just so goofy, man.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so it's hold on one second. Don't burn my house down. And I think the biggest thing, or one of the biggest takeaways I take from that is, you know, listen, what we do today as men, as I don't know if you have children, but I have none, right? But I think about fatherhood every single day. Leadership is something that has always been very important to me. And I'm always thinking of how can I best be a leader and be the leader and be someone that my future wife and my future children will admire and not just respect in terms of being a provider, but actually like, right? That's a big thing for me as well, because I don't want to just be one of those, well, you know, my father, he definitely was a good provider, but they couldn't stand my black ass. You know what I mean? I don't want that. But at the same time, what I'm saying with that is what we do today as men or as patriarchs in training or in practice is going to echo for decades. And we really have to be frugal with our time and with our energy. And so in that regard, or in that respect, you have to think, am I using enough of my time the right way by going back and forth with people who have no intention of hearing what I got to say, you know? And I say that because I struggle with that as well, because it's natural that your flesh and that, you know, your ego wants to go back and forth because you feel like, listen, I'm going hard for Malcolm. I got to do this for Malcolm. You know what I'm saying? But the fact is, if somebody has taught themselves to believe that Malcolm was this and that, and there's not a shred of evidence, they're beyond convincing otherwise. They're thinking that way because they want to. They're beyond dissuasion. And so it's like, I'm much better off taking that energy that I would spend going to war with you and putting that towards the enterprise that I actually believe in, which is self-determination, which is leaving a foundation for my children, which is instilling in them the principles and the values that I think will enable them to live life as efficiently as possible, you know, and everything from life, love, finances, all that, to live life as efficiently as possible, you know? And what I do right now is going to echo into damn near eternity. And so is it really a good investment of my time to sit here and argue? Now, obviously, you and me, we chop it up because we're like-minded, right? And it's good for brothers like us who think this way to sit down and chat, you know, just like a couple of fellas. But I will say it's a lot more exhausting talking to them than it is talking to you, right? And so you and me, we can talk of, you know, probably offline, you know, how do we build? You know what I mean? You and me both love music. We both love rapping. How do we build? How do we do this to build the culture? You know, you can't have that conversation with people who are going out of their way to say that Malcolm was gay. You know, you can't have that conversation with people, you know, or people who, you know, has been hip hop wannabe pioneers that are saying that Malcolm had no impact. You know who I'm talking about. You can't have that conversation with them. They're beyond dissuasion, you know? And so at the end of the day, you and me, we're in a similar tribe, because it's like the whole black community, it's like, or the whole black nation, if you want to call it. I wouldn't even call it a nation, honestly, but I'd more so call it like a federation or a confederation. You know, each camp, each ideology, each school of thought, when it comes to the methods and the best means of black liberation, is its own state, in a sense, its own ideological state. And it's like, listen, I could either go to war with you for not agreeing with me, or I could fortify my state. And we can continue on and go in the direction that we believe in. And as I said before, what did your grandmother say? What shows up in the wash shows up in the rinse?
Yep.
Yeah, in the same way, right? We'll be able to figure out in 50, 60 years who was right and who was wrong. I'm not a betting man, right? I typically only bet on things that I believe are sure things. And this direction that I believe that you and I are in is the direction I think that we're bringing honor to Malcolm's name. And I think that it's what we do and the decisions that we make, including the debates and the pointless arguments that we choose to not engage in just for the sake of time and sanity, is ultimately going to bring to fruition everything that Malcolm expected out of us, that he expected out of his own generation, you know?
Big facts. Like, I'm about to say something maybe get me canceled.
Bring it.
You know, like I said, like my point before, as far as like, you know, that certain demographic, that certain the certain, we're gonna call them Babylonians, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, none of their people have a legacy to carry on. If you think about it, no one said, yo, let's carry on, you know, Baldwin's legacy. Let's carry on Hughes's legacy. And nothing against them. You know what I'm saying? But they didn't do anything that was worth continuing on a grand scale.
Not enough for people to want to attack their character.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I said? I said, you know, it seemed like when I think about the 60s, everybody was getting shot. King, both Kennedys, X, Evers, like everybody was getting shot. And it was almost like if you weren't standing up for something, or if you weren't pissing somebody off, which in the 60s is, you know, attributed to you having stood up for something, then you probably weren't doing anything, right? And I'm not saying
Yo, you there? Yo. Yo, if you're there, I can't hear you.
Big dog.
Yeah, we good.
Got a little broken off, yeah. What was I saying? You get the idea, right? The point is, what we do today is going to echo it, which I can't quite remember what the point I was getting at. Somebody called me at the time. I just told them I was, you know, handling something. But it's up to us. It's up to us. Now, what I would be interested in, you and me having a passion for music is such that I'd say, okay, so the gifts that we have, or the passions that we have, you know, that thing that drives you is likely what is your calling, you know what I mean? And so I think about, you know, just to kind of shift the conversation a little bit in terms of how we can bring honor to Malcolm's name. When we think about music, what is it that you believe that we can do when it comes to music and how we approach music and art to uplift the people? What are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's crazy. Because like everybody that's ever been in New York, I tried to rap. It's pretty good at it. But, you know, I definitely have to look at the evolution.
You're not too loud. You're not too loud, are
they are kind of loud. Anyway, so I was getting into a more righteous path because this is like around 25 or whatever. I started a little bit more esoteric kind of not just rap. And the thing was like I was kind of always like that, but you know, I wasn't living it. So I was like, let me just rap over what I'm living at that point. Which was, you know, the typical surface level, low vibrational, root chakra kind of things. Root chakra sounds, if you will.
Yeah.
So I remember I was at an open mic and I was performing. I used to perform this one song, and I remember at the end I used to say, "They told us fear the eye in the pyramid scheme. Like we ain't built them. Do you really know what pyramids mean?" And that was the wave I was on. And then I was like, you know what? Let me do a social experiment.
Yeah.
One song I wrote like in 2009 about partying. And when I performed that, the whole place went crazy. I got numbers. I got all kinds of stuff. I was just like, damn.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of a message in it. But it was like, it was a lot of candy and like a drop of medicine.
Yeah.
And, but like, that's what people kept expecting. And like, put it on the project, according to the satirical trap tape, which is, I guess, me, you know, saying the stuff that people talk about on regular stuff, but just from a semi-educated kind of standpoint.
Right.
But I feel like, you know, it wasn't really getting across how we needed to get across.
Right.
And then once I did this other thing, I had this tape called 1990 Now, which is more of the more righteous lyrics that I was on.
Right.
My boy was also named Duanus. He was like, "Yo, this is the best thing you've ever done. Like, keep that energy."
Right.
And then, you know, we all got locked down and shit. But but I definitely have some things to work. I got like mad music in the vault. I just need to put together and piece together. My biggest thing is just finding singers that, you know, can stick with schedule, that won't sit there for like 80 takes and use up all the time. You go, that's perfect. He goes, nah, I gotta do it all over again. I'm like, no, you don't. So,
man.
You know, I definitely am all about raising the vibration because I was talking about this on this other podcast I was doing with my boys, like how men can be better. It's like you got to think about like what we consume. The way that you hypnotize somebody, you get a rhythm going, and then you give suggestions over that. And I'm like, how is that not music?
Yeah.
Like the rhythm puts you in a trance-like state, and then you say suggestions over that, and you typically act those out. And I've been in the club, and like a certain lyric will come on, and I'm like, yo, I'm feeling it. And it just hits me. So
hold on, let me see if I can.
Yeah, I see what you're trying to do.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, cool. So, you know, it was just again, just trying to like I said, raise vibrations.
Vibrations, you know, the rhythm gets them in a hypnotic state. You can, you know, convey the message. It's like the rhythm is it's like the conduit. You know what I mean?
Right.
With which, you know, the message, depending upon what message you convey, you know, when somebody's just like, okay, I think a lot about, you know, I'm glad you brought up that point when it comes to, because I want to get away from us referring to rap music, not you specifically, but us as a community, referring to rap music that talks about something as conscious rap. Because the moment you say that, people say, oh, God, this nigga about to start preaching, this nigga Sharif and this, that, right? And I think about like, so, okay, so I grew up, even though I grew up in a very conservative home, right? My dad was really big on, you know, 70s, 60s, 70s, that soul, you know, that was him. You know, he grew up in that, you know? And so because of that, that music was always a part of the culture of our home, right? And one of my favorite musicians is James Brown, right? And my favorite song from James Brown is, I don't want nobody to give me nothing, open up the door, I get it myself, right? And it was pretty much a message about self-determination, right? But you think about it for a second, right? That was not considered conscious R&B. It was just called soul music, right? It was just understood that when Black people sang a song, it was something you could feel right here. In other words, something that you needed. You know what I mean? And if there's any way we could take it and stop calling it conscious rap, but if we can call it soul rap, you know what I'm saying? Because the problem is when people, they don't hear conscious rap as a term, they hear preachy rap, right? I mean, listen, me as being, you know, somebody who tries to be the best lyricist that I can be, you know, I've even heard criticisms from people that, you know, oh, you're using too many big words. Which woman? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if you can't even get past the words, you definitely can't handle the message. You know what I mean? I think as a society, as a culture, as a Black culture, we have to really, number one, embrace making sure that the messages and the words that we transmit on these sound waves, right, are meaning something and that are actually edifying to the people. But then also, we have to make sure that, you know, for the people that don't see it that way, we have to make them understand, listen, if you don't understand this, it's because of a lack of effort, right? I'm not saying anything, you've heard my album, I'm not saying anything quantum complex, right? The way I say it might be a little, you know, catchy or whatever, but I'm not saying anything that's like, you know, over anybody, no, advanced calculus, right? What I'm saying is just the same thing that our ancestors have said, and the same thing, but you notice, just like you said, when you did almost the social experiment, right? The moment you started to quote unquote dumb down or whatever, or once you started to dilute what you were saying, the efficacy of what you were saying, that's when people, they're in a better mood, it makes them feel better, right? But I mean, so does chocolate. But if you have too much of it, it's not good for you. Just because chocolate tastes better doesn't mean it's, you know, milk chocolate doesn't mean that it's better than broccoli, you know? And I think that soul rappers, as I call us, we give people vegetables. Vegetables, I think they taste good, but they don't think vegetables taste good because their taste buds have been specifically geared towards eating junk food all the time.
And they may have been dealing with someone that didn't know how to cook.
Boom, there you go. Mm-hmm. That's a very good point as well. That's a very good point as well. Because a lot of times you can have that person, they can have, I mean, you got some people, they might have the right message, but they're not skilled enough. You know what I mean? To impress nobody, to make somebody want to sit around and listen. But at the same time, you might have somebody that's nice as hell. But at the same time, their depth or their profundity is just, it's not such that it would actually really build somebody up and elevate someone. Right? Kind of gives them that surface level wokeness, right? Which is typically what everybody's already thinking anyway. Who's going to take somebody mentally and spiritually on a higher level? You know, who's going to understand that music is a weapon that you have to use, right? And it's up to the soul rappers to make that happen. But I think what I'm trying to tell people is, I work with people because a lot of people like to consider themselves to be lyricists. And so I'll give you an example. Like, so my brother who passed away, I named the album after him, Power Shalem. And he was a prolific writer. He would write like 3-4 songs in a week, right? That was just him, right? And I remember 4 days before he passed away, he said, boy, he said, you got something to say. I believe it is marketable. You need to pursue it. He said, I'm not trying to force you anything. I'm just saying you need to pursue it, right? And maybe me on a personal level, I might feel another level of responsibility just because, number one, these are my beliefs, my deeply held beliefs anyway, but also because I owe it to the people that came before me, the people that see the gift within you. You know what I mean? And he was willing to bet everything on my ability, not just from a lyrical perspective, but also the depth and the actual substance of what I'm saying, right? Because you can have all the multi-syllabic, technical, complex, double, quadruple, quintuple entendres all you want, but if you're not actually saying anything that the people need to hear, if you're not actually referencing people that the people say, wait, what did you just say? Hold on, let me check that out right quick. And they look on, you know what I mean? Well, then what are you here for? You just kind of it's just babble. It's just dribble, And so I think that I think we understand that it's a responsibility, but it doesn't feel like a responsibility in terms of a chore because this is who we are, We're in it and of it already. We're about this, Black empowerment. I was talking to Dubes the other day, and I said, listen, he said something along the same line, Hotep Dubes, because he's actually going to be on this next album, Black Artist. And I said, it's a responsibility. We owe it. It's a duty. If you can rap, and if you can talk about or any type of music or any type of art, whatever you say is going to have an effect on somebody, because that beat, whether you rap or not, whether you put a verse out or not, that instrumental is going to hypnotize them. You have to choose what words are going to be transmitted over those beats. You make that decision. So as soon as you grab this, you better understand this is not just a pen, this is a sword. You know what I mean? And it can either save somebody or it could, help somebody, fall on their own sword and die, right? It's up to you. So I'm glad you said that. And man, please, whatever you got in the vault, man, I want as many of us to come out because, rappers or musicians or artists like us, a lot of us, there are a lot of guys and sisters like us who are sleeping giants, I've been rapping since I was 9. I've been writing poetry since I was 4, right? But at the same time, one of the biggest reasons why I didn't say, all right, you know what, I'm gonna drop something, was specifically because I was like, what? Even when I talk without rhyming, people say, oh, don't nobody want to hear that. It's just like, ain't nobody gonna want to hear this. But then after a while, you got to look at it like, no, I have to do this, because it's like, otherwise you're sleeping on your own gifts. So it's a lot of sleeping giants. And I tell my cousin Tone as well. He got a lot of stuff in the vault too. I said, it's time. It's time for us to take this back. I knew something was wrong when Lil Nas X was whatever his real name was, and the next day he was Lil Nas X, known all over the world. I was like, these are the representatives of hip hop. Wrangler on my booty. What? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's going on? And it's like, we got to bring that old fire, that fervor, that strength, that manhood, that vision, that direction in the music, man, that depth, that profundity that will encourage the people to, and the more people come out and the more brothers and musicians and sisters and lyricists that come out with this mindset, the less options the consumers have of hearing anything else. Right? At some point, we're going to have to drown out all the bullshit that we're hearing on the radio because it's not distributed to us by Black folks.
Yeah. I mean, just definitely music in general. Like me and my shorty, we had this game where we was on Spotify and we just go to like an R&B thing and we would like be like, all right, so how much you want to bet, this person is Black or this artist is Black, this artist is white. It's like some of the newer artists. And it was pretty bad. But they're awesome out there holding it down. But even now, like they don't really have the pipes like that. They got the melodies and the harmonies down, but they don't got the pipes. Or maybe if they do, they holding it back. Like Mario was definitely one of those people like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. You know what's crazy, brother? So here's the thing. I'm pretty sure you know this, but for the people that don't know, right? So me and Dwayne, we follow each other on social media. And a couple weeks ago, I pissed some people off. I made a joke about, not a joke, I was serious. I'm not gonna lie. I made a comment about Meg Thee Stallion and her image of being this super freak, whatever. And I just called it into question. People got mad at it. The first thing people do when they get pissed off at you on Twitter, they go on your page to see what is he passionate about. If he's selling, hats, if he's selling t-shirts, them t-shirts is whack. If he, haircuts. Oh, you can't even cut hair. Okay, I do music, so the first thing they do is they start, So one of the things the brother said, one guy said, you're using too many big words. I don't know how to take that, so whatever. Another dude said, his main critique was, you sound like a hotel. As soon as he said that, I was like, I've done my job. You know what I'm saying? To them, we're not supposed to be liked. We're supposed to make them feel uncomfortable, because that's what leaders do. They call the people out of their comfort zone because elevation is not pleasant. It's not all the time, It's supposed to be something that's uncomfortable to an extent. It's supposed to be something that makes people feel to the point where they got to get up. You know what I mean? And if your music isn't doing that, obviously not to the people who already think that way, which is to you and me. My music doesn't make you uncomfortable, yours doesn't make mine. But to the people who aren't on that level, so to speak, not to sound conceited, but yeah, there's going to be a part of it where they're feeling very uncomfortable. And you have to understand that. You have to anticipate it. And the moment they say things like, you trying to be deep, you preaching, you using too many big words, you sound like a hotel, that's how you know you did exactly what you were supposed to do. That's how you know. You know what I'm saying? What do you think? I got a question for you. I want to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think about just sonically, the style of music today in terms of like my personal style, I'm a big jazz fan. So I always like to have some sort of horn or trumpet or saxophone, or maybe like a bass, to get like a funk feel to a song. I really like that. And that's really what puts me in my groove. Do you see do you see a return to that more traditional golden age or golden era hip hop sound in terms of the, the instrumentals? Do you see that? Or do you think, that was, a 90s thing, we moving on from that and, kind of going from there?
I do see it, but that's because like I immerse myself in it.
Right.
So like I'm in New York, whatever, and like, when in times of old, what I'm saying, like I would go to like the open mic and they would have people like, just like with the speaker, waiting to get in, because it was like first come, first serve. And they would have the speaker going and the people would be rapping to like, jazzy instrumentals and stuff like that. And it was just like, it just gets the most inspiration. Like jazz, I think, is probably one of the greatest music forms, period.
Agreed.
In fact, I'm pretty sure this is one chick I used to talk to. Remember before she said she couldn't get jazz, and I was just like, yeah, this ain't gonna work.
Yeah. I remember you told me that. You did tell me that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just something about it. I mean, even like when my godson, like when I used to like, take him or whatever, like, watch him or whatever, like I would play jazz because just to put that in your mind. Because it does something to you. It does something on a subconscious level. Mm-hmm. So I'm definitely with that. I think I've heard something. I was at some bar in Brooklyn and they were talking about, have you heard about trap jazz? I was like,
yeah.
But I feel like, and I'm a very non-compromising kind of person, but I feel like in certain ways we may have to meet people not halfway, but maybe a quarter way.
It's a good buffer.
You know what I'm saying? As far as like, beats and stuff like that. I mean, first of all, like making a good song is a good song.
Right.
There's a lot of people that can rap that can't make songs to save their life.
Facts.
So, songs is definitely like the most important thing.
Yeah.
But, just something that like can like kind of reel people in, like with a catchy hook. But then, the hotepery, the most hotep of the hotep bars. You know what I'm saying? I think that may be able to bring people in.
Right.
Because like the thing is like once you really remember the hook, then everything else has to resonate after that.
Yeah.
So I think we just got to be strategic. We already use our brain power to like put these lyrics together. Now we got to like really figure out the science to like get people to get the message out and make it resonate with people.
Yeah. So, in terms of what you said about the subconscious effect that jazz has on the listener, the reason why I agree with that so strongly, and I somewhat alluded to that, is because for me, the music that can get through to me the most, obviously the lyrics or whatever. I'll give you an example, right? So, I could tell later. Point is, you talk about jazz, right? Jazz is one of those art forms. I refer to it as Black classical music. And when you think about the horns, for example, right? I always say the percussion is like the heartbeat of a song. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you have just the best melody in the world, you can find something from a jazz song and you can say, okay, let me loop that right quick. I like the way the horns sounded, right? That's like the beauty, the face of it. But the drums is the heartbeat, you know what I mean? So if you don't got good drums on it, you're not gonna get through to the person as well because it just kind of sounds like a beautiful corpse would look. You know what I mean? It looks great, but it doesn't have any heartbeat, doesn't have any life, right? So that's the purpose of the percussion, right? But in terms of like the horns that you find when it comes to jazz, they have this sort of wailing thing about them, right? When you hear the trumpet, it's almost like a wail or a cry, and I think that much easier or much more easily appeals to the listener's emotions, right? And it kind of gets them to a place of emotional vulnerability. Almost allowing them to let their guard down a little bit. When you have that sort of wailing, it's almost like the trumpet is crying in your ears, so to speak, right? And then from there, once you get that, you got the heartbeat, you got the wail, that emotional part, which is those horns aspects of it. Then me personally, you have a better chance of transmitting whatever message you want to transmit from the verses, right? And then after that, typically what I'll do is then I'll kind of say, okay, now how do we, in terms of, it's like if you're giving a lecture, right? My last album, I kind of just consider that, or EP, I consider that more like a lecture. There was only one song with hooks on it, right? The rest of it was just straight bars, right? And it was just to show people Braxton rap. Now, people need more than that, though. You know what I'm saying? Because as much as I love Papoose, he's known for his lyrics, not for his songs. You know what I mean? As much as I love Cassidy, he's known for a couple songs back in 2003, but he's mostly known for like lyrics and bars, right? How do you really get through to people, you know, so where it's not just them, you talking at them, right? But it's something that they can take part in as well, right? So you got the beat, you got the melody, you got the bars, and then after that, you got the chorus, which is something that they can participate in as well, right? And you want to keep it to a level where it's catchy enough, but at the same time, it's simple enough that they can kind of chime along with it, right? And so when you do that, you can actually have people, we talk about transmitting message, you can have them actually speaking out those affirmations, right? That's the power that we as artists and musicians have when we write these hooks. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the part that they're going to sing along with, the easiest, you know? And so that's our opportunity to get them to kind of recite those affirmations or affirm it into the universe automatically, right? So I'll give you an example. For this next project, Black August is coming out. Sorry, shameless plug, but Black August is coming out August the 15th, 2020, 2:30 a.m. The first song is called, oh shit, what's it called?
And that date's significant, isn't it?
Yeah, let me see. What is that? Written down? That what it's called. Anyway, the hook is, until we all of one mind. The lyrics only lie in the prisons of one's mind. Dimensions underlie that we here to pull down the blinds. Now you either choose alliances or let the haters do it for you. Because all it takes is one time. The enemy devising division as his design. Are you seeing with your eyes or you reading between the lines? Now you either choose a side or you let the haters do it for you. And it's that same thing. It's getting people to say it out there in the open, right? That there's people that are willing to pull us apart and you have to choose a side. Right? And you get people, yeah, you know, you can kind of dizzy them with lyricism and all that, but the hook is what really gives the listener an opportunity to take part in the experience. And I'm gonna be straight up, I don't write music for people that's not black. You know what I'm saying? I'm specifically writing for, I don't care if I don't sound mainstream, that's fine with me. You know, until we all of one mind, the limits only lie, okay, that's what it was. Until we all of one mind, the limits only lie in the prisons of one's mind. Dimensions underlie that we here to pull down the blinds. Now you either choose alliances like that. Right? Oh, it's called Court of Owls, right? And so my point in saying that is that's just the first song, but you get that opportunity to bring them apart, even if they don't like it. Like people won't even like. I don't even like Lil Nas X, but I still know the whole hook, the whole
right.
down. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and as you think, if you got, you know, Meg Thee Stallion, her lyrics are extremely easy to memorize because they're not complex in any way at all. They're not really that skillful either, right? No offense. But, you know, if she can do that, imagine what we could do. As people who are really trying to put thought and spirit into this music. And music it is a weapon. It is a sword. And I know that I just want us to be encouraged as soul rappers. Unleash everything. Just throw it out. You know, perfect it as best as possible. Just get it out there. Get it out there because at the end of the day, I don't want anybody saying they had any excuse to say that they weren't warned. You know what I'm saying? Which they're gonna say anyway, but you don't want to give them, you know, a reason to say that.
Right. You want to do your part.
Absolutely. I got to do my part. And if, you know, and that's pretty much just how it is. If people say it's too hotep or too fake deep or whatever, because everybody gonna say something fake deep when they don't like what it is. You know what I'm saying? Then so be it. But it's like, this is our responsibility. So I want to hear more of your work. I want to hear more of every rapper, every musician that is trying to uplift up with true empowerment. I mean, tangible, not just, you know, and I think in doing that, to bring it back to our initial point, circle it back around, in doing that, we're almost, for those people who, they might not like Malcolm's lectures, right? But we're almost his agents. We're like his representatives. We're here to speak for him and on behalf of his legacy and to bring honor to all the things that he preached. and taught, we have a better chance today of transmitting his message through song, through rhyme, right? Somebody be dancing with something. I mean, come on, man. You look in the club today, right? It be girls dancing, shaking their ass to songs that's calling them bitches and sluts and hoes and all that. They be like, oh, shit, right? So if they can do that, imagine what we can do with something that's actually worth listening to.
Facts.
You know? And once you see that this message isn't coming from somebody that's non-Black, that kind of establishes credibility automatically, because you know it's coming from a place of genuine Black people. So that's our way, in my opinion, that's our way of, and at least in terms of music, bringing honor to Malcolm, what he stood for, and his legacy today, you know, we're the offspring of that. We stand on the shoulders of giants. Malcolm is giant among giants. Music is such an important tool. I just want more brothers to not feel, you know, discouraged, because it happens so often where brothers will, you know, they'll feel like don't nobody want to hear what I can say. They're just gonna say I'm Sharif, and you know, it's like, well, go ahead, Sharif.
Right.
Just make it hot. Sharif all you want. Just make it hot. You know what I'm saying? It's like that.
That might be a working song title. I got to figure something out with that.
What's that?
Like something about Sharif. I'm gonna figure that out. Yeah, I definitely appreciate your time. I'm about to wrap, but I guess not literally. What would be your last point as far as like, you know, pushing, you know, keeping Malcolm X's legacy alive, how it can translate, you know, through music, just the culture. Like what, basically, what if you could leave anybody with something, like what would you leave them with?
I think the time has come for us to strive for tangibles. Malcolm's life was cut short. And as such, there were certain things he was not able to leave to his family, right? The message was clear there. The inspiration was clear there. The values were instilled in his six daughters, something like that, you know, his wife as well. Obviously, his legacy is known worldwide, but I want us to make sure that we're leaving things tangibly in place, that we're setting up. And you know, when we rap about it, I want us to rap about it and immediately go through and work to bring those institutions and those tangible assets to the community, so that this won't just be true and just and righteous rhetoric, but that which is also substantiated by buildings and structures and institutions and cities and communities, and initiatives, right? And I think in doing so, we'll kind of shorten it. I mean, it's a long-term plan no matter what, but we'll kind of shorten the learning curve, and we'll make this a lot more feasible in the more immediate future. If we make sure that this is not just something, we don't just want to inspire people with our music, right? Or we don't just want to inspire people with our art or with our tweets or with our blogs, but we have to make sure that we're also working to bring those tangible things into fruition as well, to really substantiate the things that we preach about. You know, we owe it to Malcolm. We owe it to each other, for one thing. We owe it to our families. We owe it to our children. We also owe it to Malcolm.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, you know, not just like, you know, putting the message out there, but like also living the message as well. That's the biggest thing. 'Cause I mean, now that I found out some of these quote unquote conscious rappers, how they live in foul and stuff like that, man.
It's a lot of cap in these raps.
Yeah, a lot. So yo, if anyone wants to find you, where can they find you at?
Find me at Actual Braxton. That's my Twitter, right? Hold on now. Make sure. I know I changed it a couple of days ago. Let me see here. Okay. I'll be forgetting everything. Song. Okay. Look me up, Actual Braxton, at ACTUALBRAXTON. Actual Braxton. Name Black August EP. Also be on the lookout for. Actually, go ahead and check out on all major streaming platforms. Power Shalem EP. Be on the lookout. August the 15th, 2020, 2:30 a.m. Black August. This is going to be a good one. I think y'all are really going to enjoy it, and I hope that you do. I had a lot of enjoyment working on it, and I think that people will enjoy it as well.
All right. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
Thank you, man. Take care.